Howdy everybody, we're going to do a quick little review on graphing. So as you see on the Moodle site, you can download the graphs here. Here's what we got. Take a second and do these on your own. If I have a upwards pointed position graph and I see it's a straight line, that tells me that my motion is going to be constant. Now we did the chalk walk lab, and then when we did the walking lab in front of the motion detectors, if you go at one speed, you have a straight line. So that's the first idea. So they have a straight line here. So this is constant here. So you have constant, that means you have one single velocity. It's positive since it's sloped upwards. Now, this next portion, it's flat, meaning you have no velocity. Next one. If I were to draw a little picture of the slope here, and I just were to look at that one little segment, as I see that one little segment, I would say that is a zero velocity. Now if I go here, I see that it sloped down a little bit. That's a negative slope, and it's not that big. And then as I get here, whoa, that's pretty steep. Steeper negative. So it went, it got steeper. So that means I have a bigger negative velocity. I could do more of these in between, or I could just say beginning, middle, and end and get the trend. Now this last part here, if I look at the last part, that's a straight line. That means that's constant speed. And if it's constant speed, I say, is it positive or negative? Well, it's a negative velocity, because this here is zero velocity, so it's a negative solid line. So look down here at number 3. Do it again. Zero slope at the beginning. Now remember, pause these if you haven't predicted. And in the middle, I have a small positive, and then here I have a bigger positive. And so I line up this way. Then I go from a positive, still at the same spot. In the middle, I have less positive, and at the end, I'm flat. And when I level off, that means I have stopped. And if I think about stopped, that means I have a velocity of 0. Next one. Now we're going to go from velocity graphs back upwards. So remember what the velocity graphs are. Velocity graphs are a picture of my slopes on my position graph. So I start off with, at the beginning, a negative slope. Well, I can start anywhere I want on this. If I say I'm going so fast, I can be anywhere. And so I get to choose wherever I want to go. Since I have a negative velocity, I always like to start up high because I know I'm going to be pointed down. And so I have a negative velocity, and look what happens to that velocity as time goes on. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And as my velocity gets smaller and smaller and smaller, that means I am leveling off. And when I get here, I have a velocity of 0 meters per second, because you see how I'm at 0? Okay, right there. That means I stay put. Alright, next ones. I've got a positive velocity, but look what it is. I know it changes here, but look, it's positive and it stays constant. So I have a positive upwards velocity, and then here I have a negative velocity. And they're both constant because since I have a flat line on the velocity graph, that means I have to have a straight line up here. Okay. People always ask, what about here? Well, always look at chunks of things. Here it's constant, and here it's constant. Alright, last one. I'm going to look at just this first segment here. So I start at a positive velocity, meaning I'm pointed upwards. And then what happens? I get closer and closer to 0 meters per second, meaning I level off. And then if I look at my next part, I go from 0 velocity and I get to a bigger velocity. Let's just give this a number, negative 5 meters per second. Notice that's negative, so it's pointed downwards. So I'm going to start at 0, because that's where I am here. 0, so that means it's flat. Then here it has to be steep negative. The only way I can get steep negative is to point down. Here's the tricky part. This is the one that always gets people. Now I'm here. I have a negative constant velocity of negative 5, meaning each second I move 5 meters backwards. I use the word backwards. What would another way you guys would say it? You guys would say negatively or towards the origin. So in 1 second I go negative 5. In the next second I go negative 5. In the next second I go negative 5. And so I would just keep going negative. But since on this picture it's constant, that means that up here I need to have a straight line. If you need somewhere to go to practice this, type in on Google PhET, and I believe it's called Moving Man, and there's an application where you can actually make graphs and play with it.